Okay, we're back with Josephus. And he writes, while the holy house was on fire, everything was plundered that came to hand, and 10,000 of those that were caught were slain. Nor was there a commiseration of any age, or any reverence of gravity, but children and old men and profane persons and priests were all slain in the same manner. So that this war went round all sorts of men, and brought them to destruction, as well as those that made supplication for their lives, as those that defended themselves by fighting. The flame was also carried a long way, and made an echo together with the groans of those that were slain. And because this hill was high, and the works at the temple were very great, one could have thought the whole city had been on fire. Nor can one imagine anything either greater or more terrible than this noise. For there was at once a shout of the Roman legions, who were marching all together, and a sad clamor of the seditious, who were now surrounded with fire and sword. The people also that they were left above were beaten back upon the enemy, and under a great consternation, and made sad moans at the calamity they were under. The multitude also that was in the city joined in this outcry, with those that were upon the hill, and besides many of those that were worn away by the famine, and their mouths almost closed. When they saw the fire of the holy house, they exerted their utmost strength, and broke out into groans and outcries. Perea did also return the echo, as well as the mountains around about the city, and augmented the force of the entire noise. Yet was the misery itself more terrible than this disorder, for one could have thought that the hill itself on which the temple stood was seething hot, as full of fire, on every part of it. But the blood was larger in quantity than the fire, and those that were slain more in number than those that slew them. For the ground did nowhere appear visible for the dead bodies that lay on it. But the soldiers went over heaps of these bodies as they ran upon such as fled from them. Remember, Jesus said, where the body is, where the carcasses are, the Greek text says, there the eagles will be gathered. Now, there's no reason to believe that Jesus spoke in Greek when he was speaking with the apostles and the disciples. And in Aramaic, the same word that means eagle also means vulture. Because in Aramaic, any flesh-eating bird is called, any large flesh-eating bird is called by the same name. It's the same word in Aramaic. So, if the apostles had heard Jesus speaking in their own language, probably what they would have heard was, where the carcasses are, there the vultures will be gathered. What does that mean? It means that there will be so many bodies of the dead that they won't be able to bury them all. And that's what Josephus is describing here in this destruction. And this destruction came from the hand of God as Jesus foretold and predicted, promised. And it came for a reason. For the owner of the vineyard shall come and destroy those wicked men. Who was the owner of the vineyard? Who was the owner? Who was operating the vineyard? And in Isaiah's day, when Isaiah gave the very same prophecy, who was the owner of the vineyard? It was the Lord of hosts. And who were the men running the vineyard? It was the house of Israel. Really, we don't see anything new here. What we see here was actually played out once before when the people of Israel were unfaithful under the Old Covenant. So, Josephus goes on to write, and now the Romans, judging that it was in vain to spare what was round about the holy house, burn all those places, as also the remains of the cloisters and the gates. 2 excepted, the one on the east side and the other on the south, both which, however, they burned afterward. They also burnt down the treasury chambers, in which was an immense quantity of money, and an immense number of garments, and other precious goods there reposited. And to speak all in a few words, there it was that the entire riches of the Jews were heaped up together, while the rich people had there built themselves chambers to contain such furniture. The soldiers also came to the rest of the cloisters that were in the outer court of the temple, whither the women and children and a great mixed multitude of the people fed, in a number about 6,000. But before Caesar had determined anything about these people, or given the commanders any orders relating to them, the soldiers were in such a rage that they set the cloister on fire, by which means it came to pass that some of those were destroyed by throwing themselves down headlong, and some were burnt in the cloisters themselves. Nor did any one of them escape with his life. So we see that after the temple is destroyed, the Roman soldiers continued to burn with fire the remaining portions of the cloisters and the gates that were still standing and surrounding the temple.